The Disciplines Essential in the Spiritual Aspirant, Part 6.
By Sri Muruganar, translated and presented by Robert Butler. So we'll get started today with a prayer song composed by Robert.
இன்பம் கடலாய் இயல்கின்ற வேங்கடனே துன்பம் சிறுநுரையாய் தோன்றிடும் நாம் அன்பான வெள்ளத்தில் வாடிக்கரைந்தழியும் வண்ணமாய் எள்ளளவே உன்னருள்கி இன்பம் கடலாய் இயல்கின்ற வேங்கடனே துன்பம் சிறுநுரையாய் தோன்றிடும் நாம் அன்பான வெள்ளத்தில் வாடி கரைந்து அழியும் வண்ணமாய் எள்ளளவும் அருள்யே எள்ளளவே உன்னருள்யே.
O Venkata, you manifest as the ocean supreme of bliss, and we as sorrow's foam, merely appearing within this. Grant us now the smallest fraction of your grace, so that in the flood tide of your love, that foam will fade and melt away.
This prayer of Robert has a lot of similarity with verse 101 of Akṣaramaṇamālai, where Sri Bhagavan prays to Aruṇācala. Let's listen to that.
Aruṇācala Shiva, Aruṇācala Shiva, Aruṇācala Shiva, Aruṇācala, Aruṇācala Shiva, Aruṇācala Shiva, Aruṇācala Shiva, Aruṇācala. அம்புவிலாலி பொலல் புருவுனில் என்னை அன்பா கரை தருள் அருணாச்சல. அம்புவிலாலி பொலல் புருவுனில் என்னை அன்பா கரை தருள் அருணாச்சல. அருணாச்சல சிவ, அருணாச்சல சிவ, அருணாச்சல சிவ, அருணாச்சல. அருணாச்சல சிவ, அருணாச்சல சிவ, அருணாச்சல சிவ, அருணாச்சல.
So, Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Aruṇācala Akṣaramaṇamālai. So that was a nice prayer by Robert. And I just want to go back to the prayer real quick. And I had a question for him. So Robert, what do you mean by sorrow's foam? That seems to be similar. This seems to be similar to the word eyes that Bhagavan used in his prayer. So could you explain sorrowful?
Yes, well, the metaphor of a piece of ice melting very quickly when it falls into the sea, and of a bubble bursting, metaphors for the way that when the ego pops or dissolves, then you become one with the self. And I didn't realize till afterwards that Bhagavan's verse didn't come to mind, but Anand told me about it, and I saw them both as metaphors for the ego. And the term Sirunurai means little bubbles. And that was brought to mind by Kurumtagai verse 290, where a young lady who's lost her lover, she's imagining that she's like the foam that's left on a rock when a large wave hits a rock, and the wave goes back and the bubbles slowly burst. So the idea of the bubbles, and this idea was also used by Santalinga Swami, who compared our lives as jivas, as bubbles that rush through water and suddenly burst, but you don't know when. So all these ideas came together to make the verse. But so the foam really just means little bubbles, metaphor for the ego.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. So with that, now let's move on to Sri Muruganar's neṟis, or disciplines. We are now in the 17th neṟi. Anand, please.
வீட்டிலும் மிக்க விழுப்பதம் இல்லை. வீட்டிலும் மிக்க விழுப்பதம் இல்லை.
Robert.
There is no state more sublime than liberation.
Okay. So there is no state more sublime than liberation. And for this neṟi, Robert has a comment. I'll let him read it.
The spiritual practitioner has to be set a goal at first, which is liberation, and he is therefore told it is the highest stage. But this is only to persuade him to pursue that goal and realize it for himself. He's later told that it is beyond all possible states of being or not being, and is even now eternally realized.
Right. So with regards to this, on 13th February 1937, Sri Bhagavan made a comment. Robert?
Existence equals happiness equals being. The word mukti, liberation, is so provoking. Why should one seek it? He believes that there is bondage and therefore seeks liberation. But the fact is that there is no bondage, but only liberation. Why call it by a name and seek it?
Meaning our true state is the liberated state at all times, right? So there is another quote from Bhagavan on 5th April 1937, which illustrates the same point. Go ahead.
The high state is that which transcends all states, which constitutes moksha, liberation. In fact, the jnani's karma is seen only from the ajnani's standpoint. He remains actionless only. He is not aware of the body as being apart from the self. How can there be liberation, mukti, or bondage, bandha, for him? He is beyond both. He is not bound by karma, either now or ever.
Right. So I'll let you give any additional comments regarding this neṟi.
Yes, this is the highest teaching, on the one that there is only liberation, but is one that is not accessible to us in the early stages. When the mind has almost total control of us in our waking state, this state is not accessible. Therefore, in the initial stages, we will aspire to liberation as the high state. Gradually, through practice, we will come to recognize and dwell in the thought-free state for short periods, and thus gain a glimpse of the self by dwelling as it. So it's a gradual process of self-attention which strengthens the awareness as time goes on.
Right. Okay, so to me, I think this concept reminds of one of Sri Krishna's verses in Bhagavad Gita. The unmanifest eternal is the supreme goal, attaining which they return not. So he's also talking about the goal there. But once again, it's good to have that, right? I mean,
Yes.
to know, because a lot of people are not even realizing what the true purpose of human birth is.
We need to have a lakshya.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you need to have the lakshya, you need to have the goal, and that really sort of helps. And that's what Muruganar is trying to point out here. In fact, why? Sorry?
The stick that stirs the funeral pyre, the stick burns in the end, but you still need the stick. And in the same way, you need a lakshya.
Yeah, exactly. Lakshya, meaning goal, yeah. So so that was what comes to my mind. And I can see a lot of people are not aware of this goal, this very goal of a human birth. And even among those who are aware, it simply hasn't emotionally sunk in. The gravity of the importance of it hasn't sunk in. So that's why this is so important. So at this point, I will stop and then see if there are any comments from fellow devotees here. Particularly, I want to hear how does anybody want to share how, to the extent to which this particular lakshya has sunk in or not, so I'll just let the devotees share their thoughts here.
I just want to emphasize the word, the last sentence. He is not bound by karma, either now or ever. Quite often, that is not the perspective most people have. But I still believe in this one. It goes to the absolute reality, not the relative reality. And the preceding sentences, in fact, his karma is seen only from the jnani standpoint. He remains actionless only. He is not aware of the body as being apart from the self. And how can there be liberation? It is a perspective that one has to have, that one is not bound by karma at any time. Quite often, it is not the usual way people take it into consideration.
Right. So any other thoughts on going back to the Muruganar's Neṟi? So the goal, or as I said, to the extent to which it's the seriousness of it is sinking in, or the lack thereof.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Asha. Yeah.
So I'm trying to a little bit understand that if I'm not attached to my body in the sense of, then the karma also doesn't affect me of my whatever I do, is that? Or am I kind of mixed up in thinking?
So it's only for the jnani. So for the jnani, he's released from all the three karmas, the sanchita, prarabdha, and agami karmas. So none of the karmas touch him anymore, because all the karmas are for the ego, right? But the jnani is not the ego anymore. So he is the jnana. He is the perfect state. So he's not. So none of the karmas touch him anymore. Bhagavan actually uses an analogy in one of his verses, like when a man with 3 wives dies, all 3 ladies become widows. Same way, when one is self-realized, he is released. I mean, he is not bound by any of the karmas, the sanchita karma, the prarabdha karma, agami karma, all are gone.
So, with living life, more you start getting detached, you kind of get detaching your little bit of your karma also.
Exactly, right. And the more and more you are detached from the worldly things, the less likely you are to do fresh actions, and thereby you are less likely to accumulate more and more karmas.
But
and its phalas. Yes, Robert. Right.
You can't actually detach from your body. All you can do is to turn away from it. If you try to act with detachment, it's just another form of ego. So even though, yes, you need to be detached from your body, you don't think that. You just be aware of yourself the whole time that you are. And then eventually you'll come to see your body as just part of the world around you. And then a detachment will naturally arise because it isn't you. If you look at a chair across the room, it's not you. You look at your arm in front of you, oh, it's my arm, you know. But when you see from the jnani's point of view, you'll see the arm in front of you, and you'll see the chair and the sky and the moon. That'll, you know, that's all the self. It's all you.
Right, right. Nice point.
Yeah, so yeah, it makes more clear. So, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have a comment.
Yes.
Yeah, basically, I think what you're asking is, you know, how much is moksha actually guiding our lives or leading our lives?
Exactly right. So that's the point I was trying to focus on. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
That's fine. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, well, so I can only answer for myself.
Yeah.
You know, the first thing we do is we take moksha as an intellectual idea,
Mm-hmm.
and then we work on it, and then we're supposed to basically internalize it and make it like part of ourselves. And from there on, we just all we do is geared towards that goal and nothing else. Well, I have it here in my intellect and a little bit within me, but I recognize that I still do many, many things in life that has nothing to do with liberation. For example, I like to pick up a mystery book, for example, say Agatha Christie, things like this. I enjoy that type of reading. And I know that's not leading to liberation at all, but I just have fun and I kind of like doing that. Another thing that leads my life is when I was a student, I had basically nothing. So I struggled a lot to actually pay for university and things like this. And I felt so miserable that I promised myself back then not to go through that anymore again. So whenever I see something that could go wrong, I just try to fix it myself and start working on this world so that there would not be any shortcomings of any kind in the future. So that kind of thing still is in me. That doesn't lead to liberation. And I'm still working at that very hard. And geez, and it's difficult, very difficult to turn your back to the world and say, I don't care about the world. It's difficult. The world really has a big grip on you. And you keep working towards liberation, and sometimes you feel like you're failing. But that's my case.
But at least, least you're starting to reflect on it, right? I mean, that's good.
Oh yeah, I keep it on my mind all the time. That's true. And I honestly, as Mr. Butler said, the thing is, I'm always aware that I am not this or that, that I'm something else. I mean, I'm not the world, things like this. So, but still the struggle.
But still, right. But to me, there's an important reason why Krishna said that in the earlier verse that I quoted, or why Muruganar is saying this. There is no state more sublime than liberation. I think they want to create that sense of urgency in us. They want us to get that. That's why it is such an important instruction. From a practical standpoint, I know there is this lofty thing that we are looking at the slide here, but from a practical standpoint, it is good to have that sense of urgency, that goal, the lakshya, which Robert was saying. It is good to have that. And let me share something personal with you. Off late, I'm feeling guilty beyond words, and I'm spending time on anything else. So it's basically, I feel like, God has given me all of these things for a certain purpose. So if it's wasting time on other things, it's simply not right. That's just how I'm beginning to feel. And, it's a journey, it's a struggle when we all have to go through it. So yes, Umberto likes reading the mystery books, but are you feeling guilty about it? That's a start. Very good. That's a start.
Oh, yes,
and then
very much
now
guilty.
Right. And now we need to act upon it. Slowly and steadily act upon it. Maybe cut it down a little bit, and replace it with Shravana, Manana, Nididharshana, reading, reflecting, and practicing Bhagavan's teachings. And slowly and steadily, we will improve. And that's really a good start. Thank you. With that, we'll go to the next Neṟi. Yasin, did you want to make a comment? Okay.
Yes, just I think a little bit of what Umberto said, and it takes me back to the story Robert told a few sessions back about a man who went to a guru who had a wife and was just enjoying all the pleasures of the world, and he said, this guy's not enlightened. Look at him, he's enjoying all these material pleasures. And then then the man of course went to another guru, and he said, yeah, I went to go see so and so, but I saw that he's doing all these material things, so I came to you instead. And then the guru who he went to said about the other guru, like, oh no, he's at a level of detachment that those things don't really affect him. And it's just like all this thinking about, am I liberated? Am I getting there? Should I work harder at it? Do I feel guilty about it? I mean, this is all, I feel in a way it's just so much, it's your mind playing with you. It's at a level of discernment, right? Like, my mind's going to go up, down, sideways. Am I doing this right? Am I doing enough, my vichar practice? And I feel to a degree, there's it reminds me of a really great quote from Khalil Gibran, who wrote The Prophet. And he said, the fetters of one freedom, when loosened, become the chains of an even greater freedom. So long as the idea of freedom exists for you, you'll never be free. So in a way, it's kind of, it's okay to live out, these human things. We still have, even the completely enlightened people, they still, upon enlightenment, they still have to live human lives, right? I'm sure to a degree they have some material pleasures that they enjoy, but it's the level of detachment that they have from it that allows them to really enjoy it.
The thing is, it gradually becomes that the body is enjoying it, but you're not the body anymore. You're not going to get rid of the prarabdha, and there's no need to start reading. Well, obviously for now when you're practicing, but the jnani has no limitations whatsoever. He could drive speedway, he could jump off, he could do anything. I regard it as a feedback loop. The more you experience things, then you practice self-attention, and then it's fed back to you that didn't work. So gradually you keep detaching, and every time the world kicks in and you go after something, eventually your body and the things that it does will become a beautiful instrument which just does the right thing. But you get feed, every time you get it wrong, you feed back, you go back to self-attention, and you'll go to a higher state. It will just naturally happen. It will happen in time. Or well, there's no time really, but it will happen in your perceived time anyway.
Right. Thank you. So thank you, Yazan. Did you have any other comment?
No, just just to tell Umberto, enjoy your detective mystery, I guess, in due time, as long as you're working on your spiritual.
I mean, worldly things that are necessary for our day-to-day life, that is fine. But what Umberto is trying to say is that he's spending, or now he's beginning to think he's wasting time on mystery books, which he's beginning to realize is not really necessary for his.
But that's an important point.
Right.
But Muruganar said the biggest sin is to think you're a sinner, whereas it just adds an extra burden to your bondage. Not only you say the things you shouldn't be, you're feeling guilty about it.
Yeah, but at least we can use it to motivate to spend more time on self-attention, right?
There are many ways you could do. You could say, well, at the end of each chapter or section, I will say to myself, who's reading this mystery novel?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Get rid of self-attention.
Exactly. That's
eventually, as you get more to taste the self, then the desire to do those things will get less. But you can't just cut off and say, no, I won't do that. It's wrong.
You're right. It has to be gradual. It has to be gradual. And the more and more you attend to self, automatically our grip on the other things, the grip that other things have on us will loosen up, right? The more and more we attend to self, and that's the point that Robert is trying to make. You just keep at it, keep it your practice. You'll slowly get the detachment, and then you will gradually progress. Does that sum up, Robert? Did you have anything else to add? Yeah.
No. I think we've covered.
Okay. Very good.
Kumar, I have a question.
Yes, Murugan, go ahead.
This Neṟi seems to be a continuation of the previous Neṟi, Neṟi 16, which basically says that virtue, wealth, and pleasure are contained within liberation.
Yes. So he puts that groundwork that virtue, wealth, and love are contained in liberation. And the liberation basically trumps it all. And then he goes on to give one more statement. It's a beautiful point from Murugan, that there is no state more sublime than liberation. So he just takes it from there. Yes, you're right. Sorry, Robert?
So they're not really...
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. No, so they're not really opposites of each other. The virtue, wealth, and pleasure, they're contained in liberation. So if you're focused on one of those three, Muruganar is saying aim higher.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Aim higher. There you go. Yeah. Aim higher, and automatically it'll loosen up. The grip of other attachments will gradually loosen up. So thank you. With that, we'll go to the next Neṟi. Anand.
Thannai pola piranai ninai. Okay. Thannai pola piranai ninai.
Regard others as if they were yourself.
Right. Okay, so regard others as if they're yourself. So, with regards to this, Robert made a comment. The words regard other as if they're yourself has two possible interpretations, depending on whether we take the word thannai, oneself or yourself, to mean our ego or the self, the reality. And thus it gives rise to two levels of teaching. So let's start with the interpretation of thannai meaning self or the reality. And then here, Robert brought out a quote from Bhagavan. I'll let him read that. Please go ahead.
Bhagavan always spoke from the standpoint of the self and thus always taught the latter teaching. For example, in Talks 238, he says, because people think they are jivas, Sri Krishna has said that God resides in the heart as the operator of the jivas. In fact, there are no jivas and no operator. The self comprises all. Applying this view of Sri Bhagavan, being aware of the love we bear for ourselves and knowing, at least intellectually, that ourselves and others are not different, our only valid course is to extend that love we have for ourselves to all others we encounter in our lives.
Yeah. So to stress the key point here, in fact, there are no jivas and no operator. The self comprises all.
And since we know that intellectually, it's quite clear that there is only one. We know that intellectually, so we must proceed on the basis that people are not different from us, although we can't actually act it out in real life as we would wish. But the problem comes in when, because we think we have a personality. Persona means a mask. So we have, each person has a mask and they try to make their mask perfect so they can interact with each other. But in fact, both the masks that we have are entirely false. And what happens is that when we meet other people, other jivas, we always clash because we're both in the past or in the future. We're not meeting in the present. We're not where we are. We're not where it's happening. So the way to interact with the jivas is to maintain self-attention and allow the other person's space to be, and your reaction then to them will be free of any judgment or preconception, and you find that the flow between you will just happen naturally because you're not trying to work out what the other person's thinking, and they may be trying to work out what you're thinking, but that'll have no effect. Anything that, because if you keep focused on your own self, nothing they say will do any harm to you. And also, by the mere fact that you both know that yourself, your remaining as the self will raise the awareness of both of you. In fact, Bhagavan has said that for one person to become realized raises the level of awareness in the whole world imperceptibly. So when you meet another jiva, by maintaining self-attention and not projecting your own persona or mask onto them, it will allow you both to move into a space of the space of the self, where interaction can just flow naturally and normally, because you are both the self anyway.
Right.
Sorry, that was a bit.
No, that's good. That's good. And then going back to Robert's comment, remember we said tanne could be taken to mean two things, right? The self or the reality, which you just explained, and then but it can also mean the ego, to which there is a quote that Robert brought it up. Robert, do you want to take it from here?
Santalinga Swami expresses this idea in verse 40, can't read it, of Vairagya Satakam. Verse 4 of Vairagya Satakam, in which discriminating faculty is represented as addressing the mind. Mind, debased beyond comparison. You consider the jivas with which you come into contact in the course of your actions as either enemies or friends, and in so doing you experience anger and all the rest, and brought ruin upon me. Which is what I was just saying, that once we go out to treat other people as if they're individual jivas, we create all kinds of chaos in our relationships with them, because we're all the self. Every jiva that we meet is part of the self and is therefore there to teach you a lesson, in a sense. So in fact, you should thank them for their presence. But instead of doing that, we act with ego and treat them as separate individuals.
Right. So this is kind of funny, because the way he's also addressing the mind.
This is, I forgot to explain that in this whole book, our awareness is regarded as getting frustrated with the mind, and throughout the book, the awareness talks to the mind, saying, "Why do you do this? Why do you do that?" I mean, it's a metaphor, obviously, but so that every time we try to practice self-attention, the mind pops up and does something nasty to us.
Right.
Makes us go off and, you know, do
So
something.
as is addressing the mind, yeah, this is, and in so doing, you experience, meaning in considering others as others.
Yes, as others, basically.
Right. In so doing, you experienced anger and all the rest and brought ruin upon me. It's a nice way of putting it. So at this point, I will stop and see if there are any comments or questions from devotees.
Yeah, I had a comment, Kumar.
Yes, Greg.
Yeah, just extending upon this writing that's here right now. I had the consideration some time ago that really, when it's really picking up for what I'm saying is saying the same thing that's said here, but still it's from a slightly different angle. You know, this, you know, seeing yourself as separate from other separate things, people, and what have you, you know, really is the root of all the things that people consider sinful. If you didn't see things that way, it wouldn't occur to you to kill someone or steal from them or cheat them or lie to them. It doesn't make sense anymore. And, you know, actually, it's the deepest morality to, you know, really basically have that go away. It's pretty clear. And just like it said here, I mean, it's natural for separate things to feel fight, flight, freeze, craving, and aversion. That's, you know, the nature of quote unquote relationships between two things is craving or aversion to some degree. So, you know, it's very clear, actually. Anyway, thank you.
You're welcome. And this applies not just to human beings, but also to animals. You know, what he says in this Neṟi. Sorry, go ahead.
But, you know, all of existence, actually.
Right, right. Any other comments?
Yeah, and to environment as well, mountains and rivers and.
Yes, there you go. Right, all of it matters. So we just need to consider everything, living and non-living, as no different than ourselves, and then automatically we realize how to deal with them.